Now, with all the attention paid to large banks during the financial crisis, it's of course easy to overlook community banks and credit unions. We don't, though. My next guest believes that smaller banks can lead an economic recovery in the United States. Luis Hernandez is the chief executive of Open Solutions, and he's also the author of the new book, Too Small to Fail: How the Financial Industry Crisis Changed the World's Perceptions. Luis Hernandez, good to have you with us on Bloomberg. First question for you. What is the book Too Small to Fail about? Is it really about the banking system, or is it about the political system?
Well, it's really a combination of both, Pimm, and happy to be here, by the way. Good to see you again. It talks about how, in an attempt to address the economic stability in the country and the regulatory environment, we've undermined both, the consumer's ability to receive financial services and also the very economic stability that we're trying to attain. So TARP and Dodd-Frank and subsequent legislation address some of the acute issues, but the unintended consequence is they've undermined community banks and credit unions who disproportionately lend to small businesses, which represent about half the jobs in the country, disproportionately lend to mortgages and autos, houses, and cars, the basic needs of local communities. And there's a big difference between Main Street banking, which is community banks and credit unions, and Wall Street banking, which is the big banks. So again, in the effort to protect the consumer and stimulate the economy, we've undermined both by a lot of the regulations and policies that have been enacted.
Luis, do you believe that there is almost a calculated approach on the part of the federal government that while they say that they support small community banks as well as credit unions, that they would really like to see a lot of them scooped up and consolidated and just have a lot fewer banks in the United States? Do you think that that's an agenda?
Well, I don't know whether or not it's agenda, but if that was their intent, they're certainly being successful. You know, you had about 151 banks go out of business and merge last year, and just a handful get created. That's about the inverse of what it was pre-crisis. So you had this group enter the crisis more stable, better capitalized, exit much worse off, and that's just being exacerbated by a lot of these policies who've made it easier for large banks to access capital. They control more assets and more accounts than ever before, and unfortunately, smaller banks who live and work in their community, who have lower charge-off rates, lower delinquency rates, and really participate in the community lubrication of the economy, are now having it worse off. Luckily, Pimm, I think you've more recently seen an acknowledgement, this is why I think it was unintended, by people like Chairman Bernanke and Sheila Bair acknowledging that maybe some of those policies were bad for small banks and credit unions, and they're trying to do something about it. More recently, you've seen both a House and a Senate bill proposed that caused for a delay and study of a lot of these, regulatory and policy issues, particularly around interchange fees, to be delayed for up to 1 and 2 years.
So the situation that one particular set of rules doesn't necessarily fit all the situations out there, is there a way for small banks, community banks, as well as credit unions to apply, let's say, the efficiencies of technology to bring their costs down so that they can focus on what you describe as the kind of community lending and banking business that many individuals as well as small businesses rely on?
Absolutely, Pimm. You know, as I travel around, I interact with roughly 4,000 financial institutions around the world. I just got back from Brazil literally last night. And the community banks and credit unions also have a role. It's clear that regulators and policymakers need to understand their role better. So does the general public and their contribution to economic stability. But institutions need to collaborate better. They still have some of the oldest technology of any industry, and they need to work together to upgrade their systems, drive down costs, and allow for innovation, and continue to do what they do best, which is to service local communities. And they can do that more efficiently, and that's one of the things that they need to do, and it starts with individual leadership at these community banks and credit unions to really set an example for the rest of the group. And I think if they begin to do that, and we get more help on the regulatory and policy-making side, you'll continue to see them drive jobs, make it easier for you to have a home and drive a car in your local community.
Luis, last question for you. Should we have some kind of rationalization of state banking laws so we don't have 50 different regulations?
The two-tiered system has been fraught with inefficiencies since its beginning. This is something that's kind of unbelievable in the face of all the changes that things like Fannie and Freddie really still haven't been addressed. The two-tiered banking system has not yet been addressed. And the fact that they're lumping small banks and credit unions in with the larger banks, they're very different. These three issues need to be addressed in a meaningful way. That would be more productive than some of these other regulations that are putting in place today.
We've got to leave it there, but I want to thank you very much. Luis Hernandez from Open Solutions.